the new Transalp from Honda or Suzuki's all-new V-Strom 800DE. Which would I buy? I'm going to go over both these bikes with a fine-tooth comb and try to determine each bike's strengths and weaknesses, basically where one bike shines over the other. I'm going to look at styling, features, ergonomics and performance. If that sounds like something that could be of benefit to you, come along for the ride. It's 2022 and we have two all-new adventure bikes coming in 2023. When word first broke of the new 750cc Transalp, I would have had my money on a bike built on Honda's very handy NC750X platform, a parallel twin adventure motorcycle with excellent balance, handling and maneuverability, thanks to its low-slung engine and fuel tank located low down under the seat. But no, instead, it's an all-new motorcycle borrowing more from the Africa Twin than the NC750X, with an all-new engine, a higher revving parallel twin. Now, I really like the torquey power delivery of the NC750X's parallel twin. Suits me perfectly, and it's one thing I wouldn't change on the bike, so it is going to be interesting to see how the new Transalp puts down its power. So far, we only have the test rides of the new Honda Hornet to go by, which shares the same engine. But Honda has said the engine will be in a slightly different state of tune for the Transalp, and the gearing will be taller than the Honda Hornet, and more suited to longer distance riding. Is this going to appeal to riders seeking a Honda alternative to Yamaha's Tenere T7? I'm beginning to think not. The Transalp appears to be more V-Strom than Tenere, an adventure bike designed for longer stints in the saddle, rather than more dedicated off-road riding, which is why I'm comparing these two today. If you'd like to see a Transalp Tenere comparison, let me know in the comments below. The first thing I want to compare is weight. Which is lighter? The Transalp weighs in at 208 kilograms curb weight ready to ride, and the V-Strom 800DE weighs 230 kilograms. That's 22 kilograms heavier. Now for engine capacity, the Transalp measures 755 cc's, it's a parallel twin, and the 800DE measures 776 cc's and is also a parallel twin. The Honda produces its peak horsepower figure of 90.5 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, and the V-Strom 800DE produces its peak horsepower figure of 83.1 horsepower, a full 1,000 RPM earlier in the rev range at 8,500 RPM. For torque, the Transalp develops 55.3 foot-pound at 7,250 RPM, and the Suzuki develops 50.1 foot-pound at 6,800 RPM. While the Transalp has the upper hand in outright numbers, the 800DE again hits its peak torque figure earlier in the rev range. I'm now wondering if the 800DE might feel a little more torquier than the Transalp. Equations may become more balanced when we consider the extra weight of the 800DE though. I have calculated the power to weight figures for both bikes with a 200 pound or 90 kilogram rider on board. Let's see how that pans out. The Transalp measures 0.137 and the 800DE measures 0.117. If you put these bikes side by side at the lights, the Transalp will walk away from the V-Strom, I'm afraid. The same applies to torque too. The Transalp measures 0.084 and the V-Strom measures 0.070 when we're talking torque power to weight. No matter which way you look at it, the Honda has the V-Strom bested when it comes to the performance figures. Another thing I want to look at is fuel tank size and economy. If we're going to be travelling longer distances on these bikes, more is always better. The Transalp has a 16.9 litre fuel tank and the V-Strom 800DE has a 20 litre fuel tank. That's a big advantage to the V-Strom right there, but what's the economy like? The Transalp gets 4.3 litres per 100 kilometres and the 800DE gets 4.41 litres per 100 kilometres. Again, so close it doesn't matter, but with its larger fuel tank, the V-Strom should travel further on a full tank of fuel. I estimate you'll go around 15% further on the Suzuki before hitting empty. But what about ergonomics? Let's compare seat heights. The Transalp measures 850mm and the 800DE measures 855mm. So close you may as well say they are the same, but still a 5mm advantage to the Honda here. Now let's overlay the two bikes and look at the rider triangle. The V-Strom rider triangle markers are in orange and the Transalps are pink. And the first thing I want you to notice is that when I overlay the 800DE over the Transalp, the wheelbases are practically identical. And this is borne out by the numbers. The Transalp wheelbase is 1560mm and the 800DE's wheelbase is 1570mm. Now the next thing I want you to see is that although the rider triangles are very similar, the rider sits further back in the frame on the Suzuki. With the rider sitting further forward on the Honda, this will give a greater sense of control in my opinion. Also note that the rider sits a little higher in the seat and their feet are a little higher on the Suzuki, but their hands are relatively the same in height as the Honda. Also, the rider is going to be reaching for the bars a little more on the Suzuki. With this in mind, the Honda is going to be more comfortable is my prediction. The rider's hands will be a little higher on the Honda, the seat a little lower, the riding position a little more compact and further forward in the frame. I can also see there is going to be more room in the seat backwards and forwards for the rider on the Honda. Another big plus. Of interest too is the muffler size comparison. Much smaller on the Honda. Ground clearance on the two bikes looks almost identical, with the Honda measuring 210mm and the Suzuki measuring 220mm. And screen protection also looks superior on the Honda as well, but I understand there will be optional larger screens available for both bikes. Now I have covered both these bikes in my Do I Fit series, so I won't cover that ground again in this video. If you want to watch those videos and see how you might potentially fit, I'll leave thumbnail links to both those videos at the end of this one. Now for the notable features. The Suzuki comes standard with an up and down quick shifter, whereas it appears to be only optional on the Honda, and both offer a TFT display, rider modes, traction control and adjustable ABS options. The wheel sizes are 21-inch front and 18-inch rear on the Honda, and 21-inch front and 17-inch rear on the Suzuki, and suspension travel is superior on the Suzuki with 220mm of travel for both front and rear, as opposed to 200mm of travel on the front and 190mm of travel on the rear for the Honda. Accessories like fog lights, heated grips, center stand, skid plates and much more will be readily available for both models at time of launch. Now we do have V-Strom 800DE pricing in Australia. It sells for 18,590 Australian dollars right away. That currency converts to 10,241 British pounds or 12,561 US dollars. There's no mention of it on Honda Australia's website yet or any hint of pricing, but I did hear recently the Transalp may only be coming to Europe and the UK for 2023. We may be waiting a year or more before we see it here in Australia. We'll see how that pans out. Now, there is something I can't find any mention of for both bikes, and that is cruise control. Honda and Suzuki are marketing the Transalp and V-Strom as all-day tourers. Why is there no cruise control? This is bewildering to me. Both bikes are clearly designed to travel longer distances. Why on earth did they leave cruise control out? Makes absolutely no sense to me. Alright, decision time. Which would I buy? Well, it's a no-brainer for me. With its superior power to weight ratio, better riding position and ergonomics in my opinion, lighter weight, more comfortable seating space and what looks to be excellent weather protection, I'd personally go the Transalp over the V-Strom 800DE, regardless of price. Now that's a big statement. Even if the Transalp was $1,000 to $2,000 more expensive, I'd still choose the Honda. That's how much of an advantage it has to me. But that's just me. What would you buy? Let me know below.